Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mark Bell's Power Project podcast, hosted by the fat guy himself, Mark Bell, co-hosted by Nsima Inyang, and the voice you're hearing right now, myself, Andrew Zaragoza. Today we had just the Power Project crew, so no guest, and just like a previous episode with just the crew, we had intended on speaking about different topics. Today's topic was supposed to be about fat loss, and again, we just started kind of just expressing all our thoughts and feelings about the George Floyd situation and everything that's going on. Drew Brees, a bunch of just concerns that we all kind of have been had in our head lingering around, and we just kind of spilled them out on all over each other, and we talked each other through certain things. And really what it came down to was, we kind of started discussing like what can we do to help the situation. Someone like me, I'm not really going to put myself out there in harm's way, and because some of these peaceful protests have been turning violent, and like I said, I don't want to get stuck in the middle of a rock and a hard place. Right? It's a tough situation. So we basically broke it down into what we can do to help the situation that's going on right now. And I think you guys are going to appreciate it and find some value in it. And before the conversation gets started, I wanted to let everyone know that markbell.com is offering another free 30-day trial. If you guys haven't been poking around that website, there is now a premium version of markbell.com. It is a, quote, more betterist version of the website. So basically, you can gain access to the normal markbell.com, like the movement of the day. That nothing has changed, but now there's just a whole nother different section where you get even more stuff. Again, last time we did this promo, we did a lot of bodyweight stuff, but there's some gyms that are opening up here and there. So you guys are probably sick and tired of bodyweight workouts. So what Mark and crew did, they're going to offer a free 4-week post-COVID strength program to help build your strength back. It's not just Mark Bell. He brought in Jesse Burdick. He brought in Kelly Starrett. Tons of stuff. It's going to be really freaking awesome. And on top of that, you gain access to the People's Coach official scoreboard. So you can literally put points up on the scoreboard. It's an awesome way to keep yourself accountable. It's kind of like another accountability partner. But really, it's just to help keep you motivated, keep you coming back, really keep you on track. And on top of that, not everybody has the opportunity to come train at the strongest gym in the West, the Super Training Gym here in West Sacramento. So we're bringing the gym to you guys. You guys now will have the ability to follow every single workout that the entire Super Training team does. So that whole team workout, you guys can gain access to that. And we're talking stuff from Power WOD, again, from Kelly Starrett, all the way to the fat shaming. If you guys are unfamiliar, that's just basically our version of doing cardio at the end of a workout. We call it fat shaming because if you don't do it, you kind of, you get it. Anyways, again, that's at markbell.com. Sign up from now till the end of June, and you'll receive a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is put in your email address, and you gain access to the entire website, including the premium, more betterist version of markbell.com. So that's it for me. So, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the show.
Hey, you know what? I'm jealous of you guys. I think you guys got the salted caramel collagen protein.
Yeah, I got 2 of them actually.
See. Anyway, I could tell by the way you guys are acting today.
Well, it was funny because Nsima, so I went and I picked up my salted caramel MCT oil powder, and then I seen there's a couple extra ones over there, and then Nsima checked with me. He's like, "Hey, there's a few extras here. Did you grab yours?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I don't know who the other ones were." And now it makes sense.
Nsima is just sitting on a pile of those bars and stuff too.
No, I finished them. The bars are done. The bars are done.
You put them all on top of each other all at once?
Yeah, they've been done for a few weeks now, so I'm barless. But you have peanut butter, right?
Oh man, yeah, amazing. Yeah. The peanut butter cookies, and I think the peanut butter cookies. I posted about them, and then they told me they're not out yet. You can't be talking about these things. So I think they might be out by now. I think they said June. I want to say they said June June 5th or June 7th or something like that. Anyway,
Okay.
they'll be on the website soon enough. But, in this episode, we're going to talk a bunch about, we're going to go all over the place like we always do, but we're going to talk a bunch about, fat loss and just some new things that we've all been up to try to, maintain a good, healthy, strong body. And I think all three of us are in the best shape of our lives in a different kind of way than on stage bodybuilding shape or or the shape Andrew got in for a photo shoot. It's different, but it's a lot more manageable of a lifestyle. And Perfect Keto, they have a lot of products that you can utilize to your advantage, get some good leverage, and stay in tune with the diet. And you don't have to be, you're still going to be regimented. You're still going to have a routine. You still have to you still have to train hard and all those different things, but now you get the ability to have some things that taste really good. You get to look forward to some nice things. They have cookies, they have bars, they have collagen powder, they have instant coffee. I don't know if you guys have messed with their instant coffee before, but that's really good too. They have a mocha, they have a vanilla. They got all kinds of stuff. So, I suggest everyone that is trying to, stay strict to a certain diet, but still wants some good flavor and still wants some great products, you got to check out the stuff they have at Perfect Keto.
For more information on Perfect Keto, please head over to perfectketo.com/powerproject. At checkout, enter promo code PowerProject25 for 25% off any order of $50 or more.
Are you guys picking up any of the wind I have going on over here? Are you okay?
We're good.
No, it's good.
Okay, good. Yeah, I want to make sure it's not like it's whisking in my headphones a little bit, but if you guys aren't picking it up, then that's great.
Yeah, it looks cool. And your background looks like one of those moving screensaver things.
Yeah, the sky's moving quick.
Yeah.
Like it's just
we got a lot of wind. That's why I was asking. It's the wind's supposed to pick up to like 25 miles an hour today.
Whoa.
Oh, damn.
It's gonna blow me away. I'm only I was 231 pounds this morning, so I'm just gonna get swept away. I'm just trying to get these arms skinny. And just trying to get, flabby.
I had a dream a few nights ago.
Oh, was I in it?
No, you weren't. But it was weird because in the dream, all I remember was I was saying, oh my God, I'm only 200 pounds. And I've been telling people I was 240. And then I woke up and oh no, I'm 200. And I was like, wait, no, I'm not. It was the weirdest dream
ever.
Dude,
this is some underlying shit. You're going to get found out, Nsima.
It was so weird. I've never dreamt about weight and stuff like that before.
Oh my God. Kelly Starrett was going around his whole life. Now Starrett is probably the same height as you, Nsima, give or take an inch or two. I don't know who's taller or whatever, but
yeah,
he's a fairly tall guy. And Jesse Burdick is tall as well. He's a little taller than I am. He might be about your height. He's definitely the same height as Kelly. Mm-hmm. And Kelly said something about being 6'4". And me and Burdick did a double take, and then we looked at Kelly like he was crazy, and then we looked at each other. And we're like, should we inform him? Or just let him have it, and just let him think he's 6'4", and I looked at Kelly and it was like, you're not 6'4", dude. You're just not. And he's like, no, I'm 6'4". And then he pulls out the doctor thing. He always pulls that shit out.
Yeah.
He goes, motherfuckers. He's like, I'm a doctor. He's like, I think I would know how tall I am. He's like, I think I would know how to measure. And I was like, is that something they taught you in medical school? And we were just harassing each other like crazy. And then Burdick is Burdick's like, we're the same height. He's like, I'm 6'2" on a tall day with shoes on. And he's like, so you're just not 6'4". And we were going back and forth. And then there was something that popped up a few months later. Strat got in really good shape and he started talking about being 8% body fat.
Ooh.
And so me and Burdick got on a conference call with him and we said, hey, remember the conversation when you were telling everybody you were 6'4"? I was like, do we have to have a conversation about the 8% body fat? And he's like, I know. He's like, but it was just one test. He's like, and so I just went off the test and he's like, and I was all excited. I'm like, you're not 8% body fat, Kelly. I don't know how we could tell you this.
The body fat one is one that everyone likes to pull out. They're like, I'm 7% body fat. I'm 8% body fat. Like, nah, bro, you're like 14.
That reminds me of that.
You need veins and you need abs to show for it, right?
It reminds me of that Adam Sandler bit where he's telling him he's selling him all kinds of drugs, and he's like, that was just pencil shavings. It wasn't weed. And
he says he's so high. He goes, I'm so high. He's like, because you had the pot brownies. And he's like, yeah, man. And he's like, there's actually no marijuana in those.
And he's like, it's because I'm so drunk, man. I drank like all these beers. And he's like, those were non-alcoholic. He's like, it's this LSD you gave me, man. And he's just like, I'm wigging out on this. And he's like, those were just paper clippings. And then he goes on to he tries to commit suicide and he shoots himself. And he's like, I'm so dead, dude. And and Adam Sandler's like, it was a cap gun. And he's just like, fuck.
Just keeps crushing him.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the message come through from our boy Smokestack that we're going to have Darrell Davis on the podcast again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I've been, doing some research and poking around like a lot of people I'm sure listening to the show are hopefully, I hope a lot of people are doing it. Maybe not everyone's doing it, but I hope a lot of people are trying to educate themselves. I know that, with what happened, it's hard to see what happened. And, I'm not imagining that anyone's running to the library, to whip out a bunch of books. But really, truthfully, as much as that is hard to do because you get so angry and frustrated, that's kind of the best medicine because, if you think about racism and you think about fighting it, that you hear people talk about fighting cancer. We know that you're not really fighting cancer. You're not like punching a cancer cell. We don't have that ability at the moment to do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I think when we think about fighting racism, I think we've got to put some logic behind it because who are we going to punch and where are we going to direct our anger towards? And that is something that's just not easy to make sense of. And after you see someone get murdered on television by authority, by people that are supposed to protect us, it leaves you very confused. It leaves a lot of people very sad, very mad, just very, very emotional in a lot of ways. And that is what you want to do when you see it happen. You just want to run outside and punch somebody. I'm sure a lot of people, I felt that way. I'm just like, somebody needs to pay for this. And it makes you feel like you want some sort of revenge, and I can only imagine how other people felt that are closer to this or that have been in predicaments like that before, how just enraged you'd be.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All the things that I guess we've been learning about. I was talking to Andrew about this, and I found out about this guy. I don't know, it was a few months ago, but I think his name is it Darrell Richards? I had to look. Darrell Richards. You heard about him, Mark?
I've heard about him before. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one that that was kind of just shoved under the rug. But the weird thing about the Darrell Richards shooting here in Sacramento is that he's 19 years old. It was in 2018. You see the body camera footage, right? I don't know if you got the info about the footage, but you see the footage right before the cops get to him. The cops get to him. They're like, put your hands up, put your hands up. The video shoots off on all the cops' cameras. It turns back on. He's down on the ground with a pellet gun next to him. So it's like, and one of our listeners are listening, and maybe I got something wrong there because I was trying to everywhere I was seeing all that, that footage it's not there. And they're saying, something happened to the body cameras at that point in time. But it's, again, a situation where you just don't know what happened. I'm not blaming the cops. I'm not saying they did something, but it's really odd that the footage disappears before a shooting happens, before you see anything.
On multiple cameras, though, right? Multiple
cameras. It's really weird.
Yeah, there was a guy that got shot in Vallejo. I think he was I think he's Mexican. I think he's I want to say 19 or 20. and he just happened to be around like during the looting and stuff. Not just happened to be around. I mean, he was, I think, participating, but he went to like put his hands on his head, and I think from what they said he was on his knees, but they also said that he had a hammer. So I don't know, I don't know what he was doing or whatever, but this poor kid got shot and killed, and I think. Nsima, you mentioned this before, and we've heard CT and other people talk about it. Darrell Davis talked about it, how there's a conversation in black home and African American homes where you say, hey, here's what potentially can happen. There's a lot of racism out there. And I think this is something for all ethnicities to know, is that if you get into a predicament with the police and you run or you do anything alarming, or you have like, a hammer or like, whatever it might be, you just have to understand just how potentially dangerous that could be. The police, they're not just going to, try to shoot you in the shin. They don't know what your intentions are, and they're probably going to, if they have to take out their gun, they are prepared to use it, and I'm sure they're aiming to kill in that situation, which is extremely unfortunate. But yeah, what happened with this kid, it's like he's probably just a young kid that had pent up aggression and anger and just was frustrated, and I'm sure he was doing stuff that he probably shouldn't have been involved in. But at the same time, it's like we know that people don't deserve to be shot. It's hard to make sense of these situations.
Yeah. And we mentioned multiple times on the show that, and I need to say this for myself too. It's like, I know officers have a very difficult job. Like, I'm not someone who hates police. But it's just like, I saw something where somebody posted that we need to defund the police. Mm-hmm. I've been hearing that going around, right? But that kind of doesn't make much sense, because at the end of the day, we do need police. In society, we need individuals we can call when something happens. Like, it's necessary. So we can't defund them, because if you defund the police, what's going to happen? Well, less people are going to even want to become policemen, and we'll have worse people for the job. And it's not like I'm someone who knows exactly what needs to be done, but we've talked about this a little bit. It needs to be harder, I feel like. If anything, it needs to be harder to become an officer. And maybe because it's so difficult and because they go through such rough training, maybe they should be paid more. Who knows? I don't know, but I don't think it makes sense to take away from that. Yeah. There needs to be some sort of reform, but you can't pay them less. Like, that doesn't make much sense either.
Well, just think about this for a second too. Like, I know they have stuff in police academies, right? Like sensitivity training and these kinds of things, but like, that's a weird conversation. Mm-hmm. And again, I understand it's very difficult to figure out who's the good guy and who's, got prejudice. And I'm not saying that any of it is very easy, but like I don't feel like I need to be told that Black Lives Matter. Like I know that, I don't feel like I need a speech about it, and some people may be offended by a statement like that, but I've always been told that all lives matter. I come from a very loving home, and we have respect for other people, even though I have personally partaken, and I've mentioned this in other videos, I personally partaken in racial jokes, and I'll probably always continue to do that. I just
usually jokes.
Yeah, usually the banter back and forth is with somebody who, if anybody has ever had a problem with it, I would hope that they would come to me and say, hey, dude, like, I'm just not, none of that shit's for me. And I would be fine with that. And I'm not going to, bully somebody and just keep harping on it. But, the police force, they're in a very difficult situation. But you would think that, a lot of screening, a lot of heavy screening. And I know that they do that. I know they have a lot of tests mentally, physically, and things of that nature. But I don't think they re-up it very often. I mean, imagine being on the police force like, I'm just going to play devil's advocate and play from the side of the police, right? Let's just say, like, every day you're just seeing people acting like dirtbags, and it's all races. And you just keep seeing people continually lying to you all the time. No, that's not my bag of weed, dude. Like, what are you talking about? That's not my gun. That's not my this. It's just every day. And you're like, it probably wears on you after a long period of time. Now, I don't know if those guys get continually tested once they've been in there for a long time, but you would think something that could potentially help is that you do start to communicate with them, or you ask the people they work with, and they could say, yeah, dude, like, Mark's been super aggressive, when we've been out on some, he's been a little over the top. I don't know what's, and they give you some sort of evaluation, and they say, hey, look, we're going to switch you over into, a field where, they potentially don't get into the same, they don't get into the same thing. I mean, if you don't have proof that the guy's like doing anything too horrible or whatever, right? But the training definitely needs to be stepped up, and they might need to put more money into the police departments rather than less. And I think some people think that, it's okay to just let people stampede over the community. And a lot of people are against, what Trump called into action, but a lot of stuff that Trump was calling into action was just in response to, I don't think anybody else knew what to do at that point, because it did look like people are kind of overrunning cities. They're lighting shit on fire. They're getting very violent. And yes, there's a lot of images of police officers, again, probably abusing their power, but something else to think about to make things even more complicated. How much training do people have in real riots? Not a lot, not much. Thankfully, right, that we don't have a lot of riots, but they don't have a lot of training, and they keep telling you not to cross this line, and you cross that line. I don't know what they're supposed to do. I would think that in that situation, I wouldn't hit somebody if I was the police officer. However, if I've been a cop for 10 years and I've seen what happens when I give somebody just an inch, what happens, that they take a mile, and then I'm thinking about my fellow police officers around me. I don't want all of us to get stampeded, and so it's just a real ugly mess. But I think most people, what I think is cool is that it creates a lot of dialogue. I think most people are in agreement that we need a lot of changes and a lot of things need to be fixed.
Yeah, I think the answer is more education. That's what Darrell Davis was preaching. But I have to look into the exact numbers, but I know Dak Prescott donated a bunch of money to, I'm assuming, a Texas police department to basically implement a program to teach police officers more about racial topics or something like that. But I mean, he was like, no, we don't need to defund them. We need to help educate them better, so that way they do understand how to deal with, certain different demographics, and, just to kind of just give them more ammo, so that way they don't need to default to, brute force every single time. Yeah.
Yeah. The defunding thing just doesn't make much sense. Mm-hmm. And, it a little bit ties into the sketches that I sent you guys. I think it was from Richard Pryor, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you have individuals policing certain communities, and there is a difference where in one community that police officer could be your neighbor, right? Hey, Officer Timpson, how's it going today, sir? Right? And then in another community, like in a black community, none of those people know who those officers are. Mm-hmm. They are automatically seen as other. They're not seen as part of the same community. So there is a very big difference there too, which probably, they'll be taking into account.
I think a major problem, a major issue that is going to be tough to overcome is I think that a lot of African American men and maybe women as well view police officers as very dangerous. And I think the reverse is true. And then how do we break bread together and have conversations about how that, I don't think it's going to come to a screeching halt. But maybe there's just ways of not passing so much judgment on each other before we learn anything about one another. How can you hate me if you don't know me? The Darrell Davis thing, which is just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you're saying there. And like I've said multiple times, I know that not all cops are bad. I understand that most cops probably aren't, wouldn't do what Derek Chauvin did. It doesn't change the fact that I'm still afraid when I'm in a situation with a police officer, not because I did anything wrong, just because I'm just like, I gotta have everything where it needs to be right now. So I think we're mostly going to see a change in the way that the Black community feels about officers when we see more change in what happens as far as police structures are concerned. Then we don't have much of a reason to be afraid. But until that happens, we're all going to be just as fearful as we've always been. And that's again, that's not me saying police are evil or anything, but it's just the reaction or being afraid is because of what we see. And
I was talking to one of my friends, and they were talking about how their children are scared. They're like, my kids are scared because there's these riots going on. And I said, you know what? I said, this is a really good opportunity to talk to your kids. And these people are white. And I said, this is a good opportunity to talk to your kids and say, imagine feeling that way every day. Imagine being scared like that every day of something could potentially happen. I mean, especially if you had, if you did have a past where you got in trouble even a couple times, just for real minor bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
Then every single time you hear the cops siren, every time you saw them, and even if you didn't get in any trouble, just the color of your skin, being something that is being identified as being dangerous. It's a horrible situation, and it's been I think it's been eye-opening to a lot of people where I don't think they understood. I haven't heard, I personally, I'll admit, I just haven't heard, I haven't heard you talk about it that much, Nsima. We've talked about race on the show before, but I haven't really heard you mention being scared and being fearful. I haven't heard you mention that situation that happened when you were 14. And I haven't heard a lot of the stories that are coming out from a lot of other people, because I think a lot of African-American people just thought hey, this is just status quo. And why would I bitch about it? Why am I going to complain about it? But because of what happened, I think you hear more people coming forward, and there's story after story after story, and it's just completely 100% undeniable. I mean, we all know that these things are going on, but they happen, and they get blown up into a big news story, every couple of years, or depends on how much news, I guess, you watch, how much you'll see of it. But I think that this is really opened up a lot of people to say, oh yeah, no, that's the Me Too movement as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's happened to me too. And then you're like, what? Really? Holy shit. It's happened to so many. So I think it's good that we're hearing the conversations.
I mean, yeah, the reason why I don't bring stuff like that up is because there's never a situation where I need to bring it up. I have friends that we've all had those types of situations, right? So we talk about that stuff amongst each other, but that's where contextually it makes sense, because myself, my boy Brian, Micah, we've all had these situations happen. So it's just kind of normal, but it doesn't make sense to just bring it up randomly out of nowhere, right? So it's just it is good that there's being awareness brought to that now. And again, I think the biggest thing that needs to happen is just more people need, I think the biggest thing is voting in just the right officials in smaller offices that can actually help bring about that change. Because I think that's one thing that younger generations, my generation, just doesn't pay much attention to, who we put in office, So hopefully that kind of rides into November.
Yeah, and you can get involved in your community. Maybe there's some small ways that you can get involved, or big ways you can get involved in your community. Andrew, have you ever had anything like that happen? Because of the type of friends you hung out with, or the type of ethnicities that you hung out with? You ever have, any particular run-ins with police or anything like that?
I remember we did get pulled over because we fit a description, but by no means was it anything crazy. Like, we didn't get I did get searched, but it wasn't like, they weren't, I don't even want to say aggressive, but like, it was just like very like minor, like they were just doing it because it was like protocol or something. And I remember like, we didn't even have like the updated insurance. Like, it was very like, they could have easily been like, no, you're going to jail, but they were just like, no, you fit a description. But then they got a call for like something serious, and then they sped off and didn't even like, it was just really weird. I remember being like super confused, because like I was like really scared, like, oh shit, like we got pulled over, like is everything like, I don't, it wasn't like, oh shit, like I'm Mexican, they're white, I'm gonna get caught for something that I'm not actually, like, because I wasn't doing anything, we were just driving. I was more nervous, like, fuck, do I have my driver's license? Do I have my insurance card? Like, which I didn't, because or it was the registration. Sorry, I had insurance, but the registration, I couldn't find like the new one. I was so nervous. But it was like over in a second. Like, you know, it was nothing serious. Other than that, just being, you know, with a group of friends to, you know, like in the mall or something, and like having like shop owners like follow us around and stuff, which I don't even have a problem with, because one of us probably was going to be doing something stupid, but nothing to where like, you know, I had to go.
Yeah, they're profiling probably your age almost more so than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. But
other these shit teenage kids are going to cause some problems.
I mean, yeah, and you know, at the time, you know, it was like we were Mexicans, whites, and you know, it wasn't like we were all Mexican and, you know, looking like trouble. We were just happened to be teenagers. So thankfully, nothing too serious to where I had to like, you know, run home to my parents and like ask these like tough questions. I think the worst time for sure was actually in Mexico, which we were held at gunpoint by Mexicans. Like the military was like, wait, you're not from here. Hold on. We need to now search your whole vehicle. That scared the shit out of me. Yeah. That was terrifying. But again, that was in another country. So it was really nice to get back home, you know, but so thankfully, no, I haven't really had to deal with anything serious the way that we've been seeing on TV.
I like what you said right there, you know, and that's a great thing, is that this is still the best country to live in. You know, I know different people might have different perspectives. They might live somewhere else, and they might be patriotic, or they might love the country that they're in. But, you know, you hear sometimes people talk about the American way. But I've never heard that about another country. You know, I haven't heard, oh, it's the Russian way. Like, and it's like this thing that everybody loves and everybody wants to move to Russia. And, you know, or everyone's in favor of, you know, Korea or China or, you know, communism or whatever it might be. I mean, there's still, you know, it makes it complicated because we have freedom, you end up with some really distinct disparities. Like I think we need a LeBron James. We need a Tom Brady. You know, we'll have Grant Cardone on the show coming up. We need Gary V. We need a Michael Jordan. We need an Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, you don't have those people in a society where they're trying to keep everybody the same, like where they're literally trying to. Now, what people are talking about is equal rights, which I am in full agreement that we should all have equal rights, equal opportunities to all the same things. But this idea that you might think that we want everyone to be equal, that is something to kind of rethink a little bit. You kind of don't want that. Because again, like, you know, I understand it can get a little complicated, but you want to be able to freely, you know, strive for the stars. You want to freely be able to strive for what you want to be able to get. And the unfortunate truth is, a lot of the ways that our government is set up and a lot of the ways that things are set up here just makes it more difficult for certain ethnicities to be able to get momentum heading in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And so that, I mean, that's the part that's, it's just, I think a lot of the younger people are just, you know, they're super frustrated with what's going on. and they're just thinking like that they want everything to be almost the opposite. And that's not really true. It's just this, we have many problems here in the United States, but this is an amplified one. I heard somebody say it the other day, and they said, you know, racism has always been an issue, but it's just been like 17th on everybody's list. And now here we got it. It's number one. So, and I think that's a great point. And I hope that people that really want change, I hope they have the stamina to really stick with it, because there'll be a lot of ups, there'll be a lot of downs. There'll be a lot of lives lost, probably. There'll be a lot of unfortunate things that happen throughout this process. Like, this will be ongoing for, I mean, it's always been ongoing, but this particular, the way it is now, this will be going on for a few years. This case right now that's going on right now, I mean, these 4 officers that got arrested, like, this thing's you're not going to hear much about this for about 2 years. Like, this is going to be slow, because if a bunch of stuff started coming out about the case and stuff now, people would just continue to flip out, and it wouldn't be good. So they're going to prolong this shit for a long time. It's going to be impossible for them to find a jury that's going to, be able to judge this thing fairly at all, too.
Yeah.
You know what? Real quick, on what you said, this thing is going to be going on for quite a while. But the crazy thing when you look at this situation, the protests and all of that have been super beneficial towards this case, because first off, all officers have been arrested. But I was just talking to Andrew about this. The first coroner, and I think, Mark, you mentioned this on a prior podcast, the first coroner that looked at George Floyd's body said that he had fentanyl in his system. There were all these other underlying causes that led to his death. It wasn't necessarily asphyxiation by Chauvin, right? And the second family hired coroner was like, no, that was asphyxiation. So you think about this. If there weren't all those protests and there wasn't all these eyes, and they went off what the first coroner said, would Chauvin even be arrested? Like that's the thing. The only reason why he's arrested is because so many damn eyes are paying attention to it, that they know, that if we don't arrest these guys, there's just going to be more angry people, right? So the thing that kind of is worrying is, in situations like these, when there aren't eyes on it, is it like it's only when society's angry when they're going to be able to see some type of justice, or what's going to happen there? That's a really scary thought. Like, when things quiet down and they go back to normal, will we continue trying to move in the right direction?
How crazy is that? Because, I mean, to think that all of this if it didn't happen, that he would still just be a police officer today.
Yeah.
After killing somebody like that, that is, I can't even put that into words how insane.
Yeah. If there was no video, right?
Right.
If there's no video, the police report, he'd be off.
Right. Yeah. Because what was the police report?
It said that he was, taken to the hospital, that he was still alive when he got to the hospital, and he died in the hospital. That's what the police report said. It didn't say anything about him dying on the scene.
Yeah. So they could have made like the correlation, because he did have coronavirus in his system.
Right. You also saw, and I didn't really see clear view of what the other officers were doing, but you did see the one officer was just really not doing anything. I mean, his concern was about the crowd, and that's probably what they're trained to do. I mean, you got a guy down the ground, and that officer is preoccupied, and you don't want that officer to get hurt. You don't know what the crowd is up to. Mm-hmm. But as we talked about before on this podcast, it's so normal that he didn't think anything was going on, really. He didn't really seem to. He had no concern at all. He just is like, he's just numb to it. And I think that what you guys are saying, if like there wasn't a video and there, because the other officers wouldn't have gone back to the police department and been like, hey, I don't know what I just saw. Like, it wasn't good. I'm an asshole. I didn't do anything about it. And you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't have like said anything. Now I do think I do think one of the guys, and I could have the wrong information, but I think one of the guys has only been on the squad for just a couple days.
Dang.
And could you imagine how bad that sucks? You know, could you imagine, like, that's your senior officer, you know, that's been there for 18 years or 19 years, and you've been around for a week, you know, and supposedly this guy was one of the people who was kind of saying, like, hey, I think we're good. Like, he's subdued, like, you know, and I didn't see any evidence in the video, but I'm sure more stuff will come out. But man, could you imagine being that guy's family member, you know? And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to, you know, lighten up the mood of what happened to George Floyd at all. But I'm just saying, like, man, that's a rough spot to be in. People are probably all pumped that he's a cop and he's only been there for a short period of time, and he didn't have the strength to, you know, literally rip the guy off. Like, he didn't, you know, take it that far or whatever. But yeah, you know, it's just, there's just so many things that have happened, you know, in the wake of this, that what I think is also good is that, like, you see a lot of irrational responses to things. I sent you guys a video, I think, of somebody flipping out because somebody was getting graffiti off of a federal building, and you know, they're like, oh, you don't think Black Lives Matter? And they're like yelling back and forth at each other. I mean, I think it's just like, look, somebody made a message. They put a message on a building. Somebody else has just recognized that, like, hey, let's kind of clean up our city. Let's clean up our town. And they're trying to, you know, remove some of this shit to get the city back to where it was before. And I think sometimes it's fairly easy for some of us to see some of the reactions and see some of the things that are going on and say, you know, there's just a lot of feelings behind that. You know, people need to figure out a way to, at the best they can, because, like, when there's the video that I sent you guys was like a woman's like yelling out of a car to these kids that are trying to get the graffiti off this building. And that's not going to, I mean, and as soon as the car pulled away, they just continued on with what they were doing. But without, like, you know, really communicating, like, rather than just like filming it and being all mad, they should go up to them and say, hey, I have a question for you. Like, why are you getting rid of this graffiti? I think this graffiti should stay here for a while because because of what happened, and like, just some explanation. Explain yourself a little bit. But yeah, you know, this these irrational thoughts and the fighting and there's just stuff that's going on. Like, I don't think that's going to help.
I'm glad you brought up the point about the other officers. We had one of our buddies, a listener of the show, had commented, you know, saying that we need to be focusing on everyone else that just sat and watched. I think he was talking about, like, the girl that filmed and the bystanders that were watching and didn't do anything. And I'm just like, the other police officers didn't have the strength to pull this guy off. Meaning, you know, they, like, the one Asian cop just kind of was like, he looked so passive. Like, he looked like he probably, I mean, I don't know. Like, it just looked like he knew that it was wrong, but he had no idea how to do it. I'm like, so to ask the bystanders, that's a really tall order. You know, like, I get it. I understand. I kind of agree, but not only would they be facing jail time, they could be facing fines. And if they get, you know, like a felony, then their life is essentially over. And on top of that, they're watching somebody else get killed, and you want somebody to jump in and help that. Like, there's no way. Like, if it was somebody I knew, I'd be like, no, you need to get the fuck out of there. Because, like, I don't want you to be the next one, you know. It's
kind of like this, the 9/11 stuff with,
exactly,
you know, the people taking over the plane. It's like easy to talk tough afterwards. Be like, I'd kick that guy's ass. And it's like, man, you don't have any idea how scared the people on the plane, you know, must have been. And if guys stand there with a machine gun, it's like, I would love to think that I'm going to, like, run up to him and tackle him and save everybody on the plane. But what if I'm with my kids and my wife? I might be like, well, if we just listen to what the guy says, and it'll probably be fine. When they're watching, you know, what happened to George Floyd, I mean, they don't really have the knowledge to know that he's actually being choked out. They don't really know. I mean, they are seeing him, and I would totally disagree with that statement. I thought that the people watching I actually thought the main guy who's communicating with the police officers did an amazing job. Like that guy's a stud, because short of him physically pulling off the officer and getting shot himself, I thought that he did an amazing job of communicating without going too crazy. Like he somehow kept his cool. He was like, bro, he's like, just let him up. He's like, look at him. Like he's, he's the life is being drained out of him. He's telling him over and over again. So I don't know. I don't think the guy, again, short of him grabbing the officer, which you can't even really just pulling your arm away from an officer. In some cases, like an officer grabs your arm, which they usually are going to grab it pretty firmly, just pulling your arm away can be considered resisting arrest. Yeah. So imagine what they would do to somebody who tries to pull somebody off of a suspect. That's not going to be taken very lightly.
Yeah, and I just
officer was getting like just real quick, as that officer was getting approached, he pulled out some spray. That was in the video. Like they were like kind of creeping. He was like, ooh. You know what I mean? Like, think about how jumpy that guy is. I mean, just think critically about it. There's this officer trying to push everybody away. Well, everybody's supposed to somehow just kind of gang up on a bunch of officers who have guns, tasers, and spray.
Yeah, because that's going to work out really well.
And I think there's also like 4 cop cars around too. So there's the 4 guys that are there, but I think there's other cops kind of swirling around as well.
Wow. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring that up, not to put down that guy or anything, because he is a listener of the show and we appreciate him. But it's because like I did see the girl that filmed the whole video, she's been getting tons of shit for what she did for not doing something extra, and it's like, man, what could you do? Like, you would be there with George Floyd too.
They did the most important thing that they could do. They have a piece of American history that's important to the movement of this country forever.
Yeah.
What more could you do than that? I mean, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And also too, again, if they did prevent him, then none of this gets found out, and we don't start investigating police departments more. We don't start investigating. I mean, it seems like what's going on in Minneapolis, it seemed like they have a lot. I mean, there are a lot of cases of this all over the country, but it seemed like in Minneapolis in particular, they have a lot of things to examine and look into, and none of that would have happened, So
that's a tough thing to say, but it's true. It's a tough thing to think, because you want that man to be alive right now. But at the end of the day, you see everything that's happening, and there are negatives and positives, but overall, a lot of things are being brought to light.
I think in almost all the other cases that have ever happened, people can drum up a crazy amount of excuses for all of them. They can say, "Oh, what was that guy doing? In the alley? In the middle of the night? What was he doing?" They can drum up all these weird bullshit reasons on why someone's life was taken, and how it could have potentially posed a threat to the police. And I think there's two sides to most arguments, but in this case, it's just like so clear. It's so clear, and so I mean, it's impossible to say that maybe we needed it, but maybe we needed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see the video of his daughter. I think she's on
Stephen
Jack. I don't know. I can't remember his first name. She's on his shoulders, and he has her up, and she's like, "My dad's going to change the world," or "My daddy's changing the world."
Yeah, I was sick.
Man. I mean,
the sad part though is like her being so young. She's still that it probably hasn't hit her just yet. No. What happened to her dad? Mm-hmm. Because a young kid, it just you're a young kid, so that's sad. When I saw that, it was great, but it was also just like, shit, man. Very
emotional for sure.
Yeah. You guys, Andrew and I were talking about. You heard about the Drew Brees thing, Mark?
Yeah, I don't know his direct quote, but he was talking about Kaepernick, right?
Yeah. He was talking about Kaepernick, and he was saying how, he doesn't necessarily support the kneeling because it disrespects the American flag. He talked about how his forefathers, fought in World War II. And then Laura Ingraham, you remember that? Or no?
Laura Ingraham, she's the one that said some shit about LeBron or something, right? Is that what you're talking about?
LeBron and Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and she was like, shut up and dribble. Yeah, I remember that. And then with him, he's like, oh, he's entitled to have an opinion.
He's an American. He can have his own opinion.
Oh my God.
Person. Yeah.
Oh God. And it was funny when they put those videos side by side to her response to Drew and then her response to LeBron and Kevin. It was just like, this is juicy.
She went in hard on LeBron though. It's like, nobody voted for you, LeBron. It's like,
those things are important to have happen because they're so obvious. You know, it's important that like stuff like that happens. It's important that people get called out on it. It's very clear. It's like, wow, okay. That we know exactly, we know exactly where you stand now,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is.
With in regards to Drew Brees, like I would like to point out a couple of things. I am patriotic. I am for, I'm for everybody, like whether you're a police officer or regardless of your color or ethnicity. I love our military people. I'm friends with a lot of police officers. But something to think about and something to consider is that the American flag, I understand how it is interpreted as meaning a lot to certain people, maybe because of the things they've done for the country, but something to consider and something to think about. And even with Kaepernick's situation, I think it got like misconstrued and blown out of proportion in a direction. And here's why I think that way. The American flag is literally a piece of cloth that we put stuff on to represent America. It's 100% made up. Like, we don't need a flag. What we need is each other. We don't need a symbolic thing. It's supposed to, what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to represent all of us is what it's supposed to do. And we're all supposed to be like for each other and with each other. But when somebody, I'm not saying that it's cool to disrespect the flag in any way, but when somebody is making a statement during like an anthem, they maybe haven't figured out a different way or a better way, or they thought that was the best way. I don't think I personally don't think, and somebody else can have their own opinion on this. I personally don't think there's any reason to be offended at all. I don't fucking care what Colin Kaepernick does. Now, he does that, and I say, why does he do that? And then I hear why he does that, and I can make a decision about what he's doing and say, I don't really agree with that. Or no, oh shit, you know what? Oh, the fucking police brutality. Yeah, he definitely has a point. I mean, I see it pop up on the news, often, or whatever your take is on it. But people get so wound up over these concepts or over these things, and I think it's important. I understand that people love American history, and I love the United States as well, but think about how irrational it is. Let's say that Andrew and I are at a ball game, and I notice that Andrew didn't take off his hat during the national anthem. How completely irrational is it for me to turn around and punch him in the face and be like, you asshole? Now there's some people actually believe that I would be in the right for doing that.
Yep.
Which is ludicrous. That it's an irrational thought process. And also, part of having freedom is the fact that you can wear your hat during the national anthem. Like, that's part of it. You can refute what's going on. You don't always have to be in favor of what's going on. I mean, I think, people just they get such an irrational thought process going on that it's going to be a difficult thing to unwind. But I hope, moving forward, I hope that people can really learn to control the way they think about the thoughts that are popping into their head.
That's very well said.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to clarify here too is this, because you're still seeing it. I think this week on Instagram, people have been doing a good job explaining when individuals are saying Black Lives Matter, right? They're not saying that all lives don't matter. Okay, because you still see people saying, no, all lives matter. The reason why people are putting this forward, Black Lives Matter, is because like Black people in the Black community don't feel like their lives are mattering much right now in the eyes of, police and just as a total, like totally within the nation. They don't feel like their lives are mattering much right now, so it's not saying everyone knows that all lives matter. We all understand that. Just right now, Black lives don't seem to matter as much. So that's all that is. So please, when you see your friends holding posters or you see your friends posting things about that, understand that they're not saying that your life doesn't matter as a whatever other race you may be. They're not saying that. Okay. So
it's similar to if there's funding to help an ethnicity get into a college. There's not a problem with other ethnicities getting into colleges a lot of times. So the fact that there's a college fund towards for African Americans, it's fulfilling an issue that is perhaps problematic in that particular ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And people tend to get all bent out of shape about all these different things, but it's like, well, there's no reason for us to have a funding system for places where there's not a problem. There's no reason to focus in and hone in on places where there's not an issue. We want to hone in and focus in on where there is an issue. Where there's an issue, hopefully we can assist it, hopefully we can help it, and hopefully we can draw attention to it in this case. I think people are that whole thing is just and that's what we're dealing with at the moment is we see it in our own stuff with nutrition, and we see it and if I say, hey man, I don't count calories, then they're like, oh man, he's only this one way, or if someone eats meat, then they hate all vegans, or it's like it's kind of this all or nothing mentality across the board, and it doesn't have to be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of that 13th documentary, it I don't know, it made me feel extremely guilty. At the very, very end, I don't know anyone's name, but the guy says, people say, oh, if I was around during slavery, I would have stood up and did something because that's so wrong. He's like, but fast forward to today and it's just as bad and people are still living with it. I felt terrible because I'm like, well, shit, man, I don't really know what to do. And then, you see people putting up posts. I don't know the exact quote, but it's sort of something like silence just helps the oppressor or something like that. What's your guys' take on something like that? Like I want change. I want to help. I think doing this podcast and doing stuff with CT and these guests that we have coming up is a part of the solution. But like somebody else that just doesn't have an outlet, like what, I mean, I'm just basically asking, like, how do we maybe not feel so guilty, and can we help?
Yeah, I think Nsima will have something great to say about this. But I think Andrew, what I've mentioned to you in the past is just like you improving yourself is like one of the best things that you can do, because you at 21 would be able to help a lot less people than what you can do now. With the strides that you made in your diet, with the strides that you made in your relationship, with the strides that you made in your career, the strides you made in your relationship with your daughter. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on of like valuable assets that you're adding to society. And you're open-minded, and you're gaining more knowledge all the time. So I think extrapolating that out and just kind of putting that out to everybody else. Same thing. Make yourself better. Keep figuring out a way to make yourself better, because the better that you can become, the easier it's going to be for you to assist and help other people when they need it. And I don't think there's any reason for anybody to really have guilt unless they're starting to recognize, wow, okay, I've done a bunch of shit wrong. I really need to make a lot of changes. But even then, it's like, well, you don't have to sit around and feel guilty about it, because that's not going to be helpful. It's time just to make some changes. I think all ethnicities across the board are probably recognizing, man, I can do a lot better job of what I'm doing now. with the way that I'm thinking about society, with the way that I think about other people. And I always am a big believer in, especially with what we're afforded in this country, like, man, just do the best you can to continually and constantly improve yourself, try to be open-minded, and just the same old shit that's been going on forever. Like, you don't even have to necessarily be extraordinary, but just don't be a dick. You know, just don't be, you know, educate yourself on topics, especially when they start to pop up in your community or in society. But that's a simple rule. Don't be a dick. Be kind to other people.
Yeah. I think, Mark, you mentioned it really well. I think also, like, the biggest things that every individual can do, and Mark, you did this with your family. You went and you watched 13th with your kids, right? So you brought an awareness to something that maybe not all of them were aware about. And that in and of itself, like, changes a lot of how they think about certain things. So, like, you know, with your immediate family, maybe watching something like that or learning more about something like that, having conversations with other family members. There are also organizations that people can donate to, like the Black Lives Matter movement and the NAACP, all of that type of stuff. But I honestly think that even bigger than that is educating yourself like you did with your family. I mean, it's not like, I think some people probably don't think that that's that big of a deal, but I think that's a very, very important thing to do, because then that'll have you thinking more and understanding, oh, this is actually wrong and this is right. I think that's more powerful than just donating some money to an organization and going about doing things the same way you always have been, you know? So I think that's honestly the biggest thing that everybody can do in this situation, is just to learn more about the things that are actually going on and why people are out there protesting. Because a lot of people probably are like, oh, there's no problem really, but there is, and you want to learn why they're doing it. One other thing is, like, I don't think anybody needs to feel guilty. I mentioned this in our last podcast, but I want to mention it again because this is something that I disagree with a few people on. There's quite a few people that disagree with me on this point, but there's this thing, like, you know, you've seen it, like, white silence is violence or whatever, right? Because certain people aren't posting or whatever on their social media. Again, I fully don't agree with that. I don't agree that somebody should post about something until they feel ready, until they feel like, okay, I want to post my opinion on this. I want to post about what's going on. Or, like, even if they want to bring more awareness to it, then that should be something that you feel drawn to do. That shouldn't be something you do because everybody else is doing it and everybody else is telling you that you have to do it. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that we should be forcing people to do something that they're not necessarily ready to do. We're bringing a lot of attention to it, which is amazing. People are educating themselves about it, which is amazing. If you choose to post about it, okay, cool, that's fine. But if you don't think that, I don't think anybody should feel guilty for not posting up on social media about it. I don't know. Do you guys agree with me on that or disagree with me on that?
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you hear a lot of talk about, like, white privilege and stuff. And whenever anybody's asked me about my story, you know, to be successful or make money or whatever it might be, I always share my full story. You know, I always say, okay, well, you know, here we go. I got to start out by saying, you know, I grew up upper middle class. I had a family that loves me and cares about me. Not just my parents, you know, my brothers, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, just grandparents, like everyone was involved. Like, I have a huge family, and everything you did was a big deal, you know? So, like, I couldn't have, if I'm guilty of anything, I've had too much, like, love, you know, too much, because I didn't know, you know, how to do anything for myself until last week, pretty much. I didn't know how to do anything for myself, you know, for a really, really long time, because there was always, you know, a relative there to assist and to help out. But I still had to figure out my own life for myself, you know, and I think regardless of where you came from and regardless of what happened to you, you know, I had a fortune of, you know, seeing my dad do really well with work. But I also, you know, saw him get released from his job, and I saw us make, like, some massive changes. We lived in a pretty big house, lived in a pretty big neighborhood, and we ended up right back where my parents started, which was in a trailer park. And so like I saw the ups and downs, but I just also saw that my parents were willing to just sacrifice everything for the sake of us being the best, getting the best education we possibly could, and just trying to put everything they could into their children. And so for me, but I don't feel guilty about any of that. Like I just happen to be fortunate. I happen to be lucky. If someone else wants to call it privilege, then I am privileged. I have awesome parents. I'm privileged to say that I have, I grew up in a family with a lot of love, and I'm privileged that I didn't, and I'm thankful more so than anything else, grateful that I didn't, grow up in a city where there's a lot of violence and a lot of drugs. And I mean, there was those things not too far from me, but I didn't live in those particular neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful and grateful for that. So yes, I did. If we were talking about like a starting position of like where I was in society, I was like, in the middle and didn't have a lot of other problems weighing me down. I didn't have, government or anything reigning over me to hold me down at all. I was kind of free to kind of just start and just go. But I recognize that. And I understand that. And my dad is a financial consultant for people and stuff. And he's taught me about these things and told me about these things. And I am aware, I have awareness of it. And I think that's all you can do. I don't think there's a reason for you to feel bad about it. I think there is a reason for you to be aware of it and to, maybe be thoughtful on, is there anything that you can personally do about it?
Yeah, like the documentary 13th, and then a couple of the videos that we've been passing around to each other. So I've been aware of everything that those videos talk about, but I didn't understand how and why it works. Like when I'd be having like an argument with somebody saying like, no, like, it is harder for somebody in these red squares to get a loan to move out of the ghetto. Like, no, anybody can do it. And but I didn't have the knowledge, the ammo to be like, no, this actually did happen all the way up till the like 90s, that they kept people out of certain parts of the neighborhood. Like I now have that. And so like, I feel good the next time I go into one of these arguments to be like, no, bitch, like this is actually what happened and why and how. And, so that part I am, thankful that I am learning more stuff like that. Do I wish it could have come naturally, not because of what's happening? Of course, but some shit's going to change. And it's just unfortunate that someone had to die in order to make all this change happen.
I also want to point out that the movie 13th, I got a lot of flack for it. People are like, it's so one-sided. It's like, what am I going to watch a movie about? Am I going to, try to, watch a movie that doesn't call into question a lot of these problems, a lot of these issues? I recognize that it was kind of one side of the story. And there was parts of the film that I didn't care for. I didn't like at the end how they utilized Donald Trump's voice, and they used a voiceover of his voice, and they showed this, stuff that happened a long time ago.
That was really powerful though. Like,
it was cinematic as hell. I mean, they did a great job evoking a lot of emotions, and it makes you think, shit, man, holy shit, I hope that's not where we're heading. I hope but at the same time, like you said, Andrew, it makes you feel, it makes you feel guilty, but I'm not going to watch a movie that is just 100% to all, favoring all of my own personal thoughts, or like I want stuff where I'm like, what, really? Crap, like, is that really that way? And I want to be able to look into it further and then, find out one way or the other, what was it really this way? Did things really go down this way? Yeah. I thought that movie was, I really liked the movie a lot. And there was definitely parts that I personally didn't agree with, but it opened up my eyes to a lot of different things. I never seen it before. It's been out since I think like 2016, but it popped up on the old Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing I want to mention though is, Andrew, you mentioned like feeling guilty. I don't think anybody should feel guilty for whatever level of privilege that they have. You know, as long as you're not an individual who is like, you hate other races, whether they're Asian, Mexican, or Black and whatever, and you've literally done things to those individuals, there's no reason you should ever feel guilty for any place you've started in life. Whether you're a kid that was born into a trust fund and millions of dollars, don't feel guilty about it. Move forward and do something with that. So this whole, you know, people call it white guilt. I don't think, unless you're actually an individual who has done things to try and oppress other individuals, right? You shouldn't feel guilty of where you're starting or if you're ahead. The whole idea of the white privilege thing, or privilege in general, is understanding that you do have some. I have some privilege. Shit. I mean, my mom, she came here from Nigeria to America. She got a job as an engineer, right? And yeah, she did have to take care of 2 kids, but I mean, we didn't like have to struggle for food, etc. I have a level of privilege. Okay. That's something to understand. But like you mentioned, Andrew, the idea of redlining, when I've had conversations with individuals about this, right? And they're saying, oh, why can't these people just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and, you know, get their education? You see a lot of Black successful people. Well, you got to understand, like, you know, you mentioned, certain communities have literally been blocked off from good education. You know, there are certain people that are able to come out of that.
Good education, good food, good anything.
Oh my, like, so there are a few people who will be able to beat the massive odds that are against them and come out of those communities to be successful. But a vast majority of them, all of the cards are stacked against them. And you got to understand that that's actually just factual. It doesn't take away from anything you've done as an individual. It's not blaming you for anything, but it's just understanding the way certain things are set up. So you don't think that, oh, they're just not trying hard enough, or they're just not working hard enough, or, you know, well, you know, they shouldn't be going into crime. Well, think about where they are and the opportunities that they have. And when certain opportunities come up for them to make money, you don't think they're going to, instead of having no success in school, they're going to turn and try to do something else that'll help them make more money.
Right.
Well, if the cards are already stacked against you and you just don't have that much parental guidance, you know, that's got to be tough. Like, and maybe your mom or someone still cares about you, but a lot of times these people are growing up. These people, when I say that, I'm talking specifically about African Americans. A lot of them grow up in a single family household. I think I could be wrong.
That in itself is huge. No, you're right.
I want to say it's like 70% or something along those lines. And again, that's not to point out that that's the only problem, but if you're living in the inner city and that happens to you and your mom has to work multiple jobs, well, now you don't have any guidance at all, because you don't have, you know, sometimes, you know, maybe they can have another relative live with them or something like that, but it just puts you in a really, really tough spot. And eventually the streets are probably going to win. Eventually something along the lines is going to be, you know, more enticing than just trying to go to the school that you go to, where there's a lot of violence. Maybe a lot of other people that go to the school, maybe a lot of other kids that go to the school don't care that much about their education. It's not cool to do any of that. Maybe you mess around and play a sport, but maybe you're not good enough to, you know, and make a living at it, and you just kind of end up where you end up.
Yeah, and it's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother podcast, but like the incentives to have a broken up family are very present as well. You know, you can get paid a little bit more from the government if you're a single mother. And it's just, so like the argument's like, well, it's not, you know, anyone's fault that, you know, the dad walked out or the mom pushed them out, whatever. It's like, well, they actually get a little incentive when that happens. You know, it's like, and it's some crazy stat where like children of doesn't matter like what ethnic background, like, so like a child that grew up with a mom and a dad, white parents, or black parents, like they actually, like the statistics show, like both kids can be just as successful, but when one parent is gone, it's like very obvious like how much their success rate drops. And it just so happens to happen more in the black community, more than, you know, not more than just in these red line areas that we were talking about. It happens a lot more because the incentives are there.
just look up fatherhood.org if you want to see the statistics as far as the statistics of kids, not just, the whole population, but also by ethnicity. Just kids without fathers, like it's tough. It's rough statistically for those groups. Not that they don't ever move forward, but it's rough for those groups. And you see that it's a very prevalent thing in Black communities. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's not just because the father leaves, because people are going to be like, well, those fathers shouldn't leave. There's a lot of reasons that kind of stuff happens. 13th goes into one of them, the prison systems, but there's a lot of stuff, man. It's so, again, going back to it, do not feel guilty if you feel privileged in certain ways. No one's saying that that's a bad thing, that anybody has some privilege, but understand where other communities are coming from, where their starting point is. Just have an understanding of it.
And my feelings came from like not doing enough, maybe. That's kind of, I definitely am very privileged, but it came from.
That's my point, is I think you are doing a lot. I think that if you're trying to make yourself better, but not at the expense of like hurting other people, like you're not stepping on a bunch of toes to make it ahead, and you're like, I know I know that you're not like that. So I think that, and it sounds selfish, but advancing yourself, I think, is the most powerful thing you can do. Like, even for example, if you don't take care of yourself from a physical standpoint and you have diabetes, guess who has to pay for it? All three of us have to pay for that, through insurance and through taxes and through like, it costs a lot of money. It takes up a lot of time. It fucks a lot of things up, basically. So the more that you can take care of yourself, the better off we all are.
Yep. Looks like we're running out of time, though. We got to get out of here, fellas.
Oh my God. I just want to, finish up by saying, we didn't get to talk about fat loss or anything like that, but we'll get that in a future show. I know I was mentioning that in the beginning. If any issues anybody had with any of the stuff that we say, we're open to criticism. If you want to point us in a direction of where we can get our education on, where we can learn more, please point us in the direction, because it's not like we're going to be talking about this nonstop every single day forever, but it is something that's on our minds, and we wanted to talk about it openly. And none of us are experts when it comes to politics. We're just people that happen to love lifting weights, and we love other people, and we want to see like good things happen in this world, not shitty things. And so, if you want to point us in the right direction towards some stats, or if you heard something that was way off from us, please don't flip out and please don't be offended. Just say, hey, you might want to check this out, because some of the stuff you're saying is a little off. I'll point you guys in a direction. I think some of the stuff, it's never a good idea just to go with just one source. So I'll say that in the beginning, but Thomas Sowell is somebody that I found a lot of great information from. So you might want to look him up on, you can look him up on like YouTube, or he's written a lot of books and stuff like that as well.
There's a lot of good information.
Yeah, and then coming up here on this podcast, we're going to have a bunch of guests coming up. We'll have Darrell Davis on the podcast again, so we can ask him a little bit more about this particular situation, the riots, the looting, the protesting, the whole 9 yards.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. For more information on Perfect Keto, please check out the YouTube, Facebook, and iTunes show notes down there in the little description box there. Please follow the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, again, YouTube. We're all over the damn place. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Mark?
I'm at Mark Smiley Bell. Thanks for listening today. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch you all later.